My husband had been secretly planning a new life with his ex. I made sure he paid for every lie. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 36 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I believed I understood the man I had shared 11 years of my life with. Ethan Carter and I had been married for 8 years, together for 11. We met at a friend's backyard barbecue when we were both still young enough to believe love could solve every problem. Ethan burned the first burger he tried to cook, laughed at himself, then spent the rest of the evening following me around with a paper plate and increasingly terrible jokes. I thought he was charming, and he loved that I was almost impossible to impress. Somehow we kept choosing each other. Over the years, our relationship changed in the ordinary ways long relationships do. The dramatic dates became grocery runs. Love letters became reminders to pay the electricity bill. We argued about laundry, holiday plans, and whether the thermostat belonged at 68 or 72. I never questioned the one thing that mattered most. I trusted him. 3 weeks ago, we were watching one of Ethan's favorite true crime documentaries when he muted the TV during a commercial and turned to me. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." I kept picking at a loose thread on the couch cushion before finally asking, "Hypothetically, if I cheated on you, would you forgive me?" "No," he frowned. "That fast?" "I don't need time to think." A tight smile crossed his face. "What if it only happened once? What if I told you myself? What if I truly regretted it?" I set my phone on the coffee table and looked at him. "Why are you really asking me this?" "It's just because of the documentary," he said lightly. "It got me thinking about where couples draw the line." "We already know where ours is." "Do we?" "Yes. If you cheat, the marriage is over." For a brief moment, his expression hardened before he forced another smile, grabbed the remote, and turned the sound back on. Fair enough. The documentary kept playing, but I barely noticed it. Instead, I watched Ethan. After 11 years together, I'd learned the tells he never realized he had. Whenever he lied, he always looked too relaxed. That night, he fell asleep within minutes. I couldn't stop thinking about the questions Ethan had asked. What if it only happened once? What if I admitted it? What if I regretted it? They didn't sound hypothetical anymore. They sounded like a confession disguised as curiosity. Around 2 in the morning, I looked over at him. The melatonin had done its job, and he was asleep with his phone on the nightstand. In 11 years together, I'd never searched it. We knew each other's passcodes because life made it convenient, not because either of us expected to check up on the other. That night, instinct finally overruled years of habit. His passcode was still 844, our anniversary. Most of the conversations were exactly what I expected until one contact caught my eye. Marcus work. Ethan had never mentioned anyone named Marcus. The latest message read, "She said she'd never forgive me. Guess I know where I stand now." The reply came seconds later. "Then stop being afraid and leave her." I scrolled up and understood immediately. Marcus didn't exist. The conversation belonged to Olivia Hayes, Ethan's ex. He'd changed her name after one of her early messages accidentally revealed her identity through a hotel reservation. Each message made it harder to breathe. What began as harmless catching up after a company retreat quickly turned into dinners, hotel rooms, and weekends together, while I believed he was working late. Worse than the affair were the lies he told about me. He painted me as a cold, controlling wife who cared more about work than our marriage, even though I'd turned down career opportunities to spend more time with him. Then I reached the message he'd sent only hours earlier, while we were sitting on the same couch watching television together. "Ethan." I asked her the hypothetical question. "Olivia." "And?" "Ethan." "She said cheating ends the marriage." "Olivia." "Then it's time to leave her." "Ethan." "Soon. I just need to figure out the house first." That was the moment everything became clear. Ethan wasn't trying to save our marriage. He was trying to protect what he could take with him before he left. I carried his phone into the bathroom and read every message from the beginning, saving screenshots with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. 4 months of his secret plans and private jokes at my expense unfolded on the screen. Every late meeting, every business trip, every night he claimed he was exhausted suddenly made perfect sense. By dawn, I'd returned Ethan's phone to the nightstand. Half asleep, he rolled toward me, wrapped an arm around my waist and whispered, "Love you," as if he hadn't spent the night planning a future with another woman. The next morning, he kissed my forehead, reminded me not to work too hard, and left for the office with his usual easy smile. I watched his car disappear before calling in sick. The whole house felt unfamiliar. An hour later, I was sitting across from a divorce attorney with a folder full of screenshots. He read everything in silence before looking up. I'm sorry. The affair alone probably won't change how property is divided, but the fact that you paid the $65,000 down payment from your grandmother's inheritance could matter during negotiations. So these messages don't change much? Legally, maybe not, but they establish credibility. He tapped the folder. Back up every file and don't confront him until you've secured all of it. That was already my plan. When I got home, I spent the afternoon organizing every message, hotel reservation, photo and money transfer into 3 separate backups before copying everything onto a flash drive. That evening, I drove to my older sister Rebecca's house. She took one look at me and said, "You look awful." I handed her the flash drive. "If anything happens to my computer, keep this." She read the messages on my phone without saying a word. When she finally looked up, her face had gone pale. "I'll kill him." "No, you won't." "I'm serious." "I know, that's why I'm asking you not to." She squeezed my hand instead. "I'm so sorry, Claire." On the drive home, I kept expecting to break down, but the tears never came. Somewhere between reading those messages and handing Rebecca the evidence, I'd accepted a truth Ethan hadn't realised yet. Our marriage hadn't ended the night I found his affair. It had ended the first time he chose her over me. Back home, I opened his closet and stared at the suits, the old sweatshirt he'd stolen from me, and the hiking boots we'd bought before our Colorado trip. Hours earlier, they had been ordinary belongings. Now they looked like reminders of a life I'd only imagined was real. I pulled 2 empty suitcases from the closet and packed Ethan's things with almost unsettling calm. I packed everything he would need, right down to his medication and favourite cologne. I wasn't trying to punish him. I simply didn't want him coming back with excuses about forgotten belongings. By late afternoon, his suitcases were stacked in the guest room and his side of the closet was nearly empty. Instead of writing pages about his betrayal, I left a single note on the kitchen island. "Hypothetically, if you've been cheating on me for 4 months with the woman saved under a fake name in your phone, you should probably ask Olivia where you're sleeping tonight. Your clothes are packed. I've already spoken to an attorney." To Claire. Before leaving, I turned our wedding photo face down. Not out of anger, but because it no longer reflected reality. Rebecca insisted I stay with her, and I agreed. By the time I arrived, Ethan had already called 6 times. "What is this?" "Claire, answer your phone. We need to talk." I ignored every call. For 11 years, I'd answered whenever he needed me. He could spend one night wondering where I was. I'd spend 4 months wondering where he'd really been. By midnight, the messages had turned desperate. "Please tell me you're okay. We can fix this. If you don't answer, I'm calling the police." I locked my phone and went back to the movie Rebecca had put on, though neither of us was watching it. The next afternoon, I finally answered. "Claire," he breathed. "I've been losing my mind." "I'm fine. Please come home." It stopped being home when you invited Olivia into our marriage. Silence. "It's not what you think." I read every message. Another silence. "You went through my phone? You cheated for 4 months. Don't lecture me about privacy." His excuses came exactly as I'd expected. He was lonely. We'd grown apart. It started after the company retreat. He hadn't meant for it to go this far. "I know," I said after each one. Finally, he asked, "You know everything?" "I know about the hotels, the resort, and the plans you made with Olivia. I also know you were more worried about keeping the house than losing your wife." I broke down. "Please don't throw 11 years away." "I didn't, Ethan. You did." "I ended it with Olivia after I left." I panicked. Exactly. Then came the promises. He'd quit his job, start counselling, tell everyone the truth. When he finally said, "I'll do anything," I answered quietly. "You already did." I told him my attorney would be in touch and ended the call. 2 days later, I returned to the house while he was at work and changed the garage keypad code. He still had his house key, but I wasn't leaving every entrance exactly as he'd known it. Our lives were no longer shared. That evening, his mother called. "Ethan admitted he made a mistake," Diane said. "A mistake?" I replied. "He cheated for 4 months. She defended him anyway, saying marriages were difficult, people deserved forgiveness, and maybe I'd been too distant. So this is my fault." I didn't say that. "You didn't have to." When she reminded me of my wedding vows, I answered, "I promised to be faithful. I never agreed to share my husband." Then I hung up and blocked her number. The next morning, my coworker Melissa hurried into my office. "You have company." I wasn't expecting anyone. "It's Ethan." I was waiting outside with 2 coffees and a box from my favorite bakery. For a split second, it looked like an ordinary Friday morning. The moment I saw the coffee in his hand, I remembered exactly why he was standing there. "I got your usual," he said, holding it out. "I don't want it." His hand slowly dropped. "I blocked Olivia. I deleted every message. It's over." "You should have done that before you booked hotel rooms with her." He swallowed hard. "I know." I shook my head. "No, Ethan, you know what getting caught feels like. You still have no idea what you put me through." People crossed the courtyard around us, but neither of us paid them any attention. "I haven't stopped thinking about this," he said quietly. "I hate myself for what I did." "I don't doubt that," I said, watching relief spread across his face before it vanished just as quickly. "Because everything you've said has been about you. Not once have you asked how I survived reading those messages or whether I slept after discovering my husband had been lying to me for 4 months. All you've cared about is whether I might forgive you." He stared at me without answering. Then the memory of that conversation on our couch came rushing back. "That's why you asked me if I'd forgive you, isn't it?" His eyes widened. "You weren't thinking about confessing. You were trying to find out whether it was safer to keep lying." He never denied it. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I turned around before he could speak again. He called my name once, then twice, but I kept walking until his voice disappeared behind me. I thought losing me would finally force Ethan to accept what he'd done. Instead, he tried to save himself another way. Within days, mutual friends stopped replying to my messages. Group chats fell silent whenever I joined, and invitations quietly disappeared. At first, I assumed everyone felt awkward, but Melissa walked into my office that afternoon, set her phone on my desk and said, "You need to see this." Diane had posted one of those carefully worded messages that never mentions a name, but tells everyone exactly who the villain is. She hinted that Ethan had suffered years of emotional abuse, and hundreds of people rushed to comfort him. By lunchtime, the story had taken on a life of its own. According to the rumors, I controlled the money, isolated Ethan from his friends, and eventually drove him into another woman's arms. There was just enough truth mixed into those lies to make people believe them. That evening, my mother called. "Diane's been telling people you abused Ethan." "I know." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I've known you your entire life, Claire. I don't need screenshots or explanations to know she's lying." Until that moment, I'd held myself together through attorneys, evidence, and confrontation. Those few words from my mother did what none of it could. Those words finally broke through everything I'd been holding back, and for the first time since discovering the affair, I cried. Not because of Ethan, but because someone still believed me. A week later, my attorney officially filed for divorce. He advised filing first. "It doesn't change the law," he explained, "but it helps establish that you're the one seeking a legal resolution rather than reacting defensively." Ethan was served at work. Melissa later mentioned there had been a heated argument in the parking lot after the process server found him. I never asked for details. Whatever embarrassment he felt that day couldn't compare to the 4 months he'd spent lying to me. The divorce moved into financial disclosure, and that's when we found something I hadn't expected. My attorney turned his monitor toward me. "Ethan opened another checking account. I've never seen it." "I don't think you were meant to." Over 4 months, Ethan had quietly transferred more than $8,500 into that account in small amounts that never drew attention. When we opened the transaction history, the money told the rest of the story: hotel stays, expensive dinners, a luxury spa, and a casino resort. One transaction made my stomach drop: the casino weekend. He told me he was attending mandatory leadership training and even apologized for missing my cousin's birthday dinner. Instead, he'd checked into a resort with Olivia. "I needed to see this," I said quietly, even as my attorney closed the statements. He nodded. "It doesn't just document hidden spending. It shows he was already planning a separate life." I was right. The affair hadn't been a series of impulsive mistakes. Ethan had been financing it. Then negotiations shifted to the house. After the appraisal, Ethan's share of the equity came to about $85,000. Writing that check felt unbearable, not because it wasn't legally justified, but because every part of me felt he'd already taken enough. My attorney understood exactly what I was thinking. "If you want revenge, fight this in court," he said. "If you want your life back, settle it, refinance the house, and never deal with him again." One thing kept bothering me. During every mediation session, Ethan insisted the affair was over. Olivia was blocked, deleted, and out of his life. I didn't believe him. After 11 years together, I'd learned to recognize when he was lying, and that feeling hadn't gone away. The day after his attorney demanded an extra $7,000, I called my attorney. Ethan says he ended the affair. Yes, I think he's still lying. I thought for a moment before asking, do you still manage the family cell phone account? I do. Then pull the call records. An hour later, I was logged into the account. I couldn't read the messages, but I didn't need to. Olivia's number had appeared 3 times during the previous week, 1 phone call and 2 text exchanges, all after Ethan had sworn to both attorneys that he'd cut contact. I sent the records to my attorney. His reply came 20 minutes later. Excellent. Don't contact Ethan. I'll handle it. I never found out what was said between the lawyers, but 2 days later, Ethan's attorney quietly withdrew the demand for the extra $7,000. The settlement returned to the appraised value of $85,000. The rest moved quickly. I refinanced the house into my name alone, signing document after document until everything was finished. Sitting in my car afterward, I finally cried. Not because I wanted Ethan back, but because I understood there was no going back to the life I'd thought we had. 3 weeks later, my attorney called. It's done. Once Ethan signs the final transfer, you're legally free. The word free sounded strange after months of betrayal and paperwork. Ethan came for the last of his belongings on a grey Tuesday afternoon. Following my attorney's advice, Rebecca stayed with me and our neighbour Mark agreed to be there as a witness. A moving truck pulled into the driveway just after 1. Ethan stepped out looking older and noticeably thinner. Diane arrived a few moments later but didn't say a word. The movers quietly loaded furniture, boxes, golf clubs, and the household items we'd agreed he would keep. There were no arguments, only the sound of footsteps, closing truck doors, and furniture sliding across the floor. Nearly 2 hours later, only 1 small box remained. Ethan carried the last box himself. When he reached the porch, he stopped and looked back at me. Claire, I've rehearsed this conversation 100 times. I waited. I'm sorry. I know those words can't fix what I did. They can't. He stared at the box in his hands before speaking again. I never meant to destroy our marriage. You already did. After a long silence, he said, I keep thinking about the night everything fell apart. But you didn't. I was scared. You weren't scared. You were buying yourself more time. His face fell. I kept convincing myself I could fix everything before you found out. You had 4 months to tell me the truth, Ethan. Every day, you chose another lie. He closed his eyes. I hate the person I became. I believe you. I looked up, surprised. I don't think you're evil. I think you kept making selfish choices until they became the person you were. His eyes filled with tears. I miss you every day. I still love you. I believe that too, I said quietly. But love without honesty doesn't have a future. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he asked, maybe someday, could we at least be friends? I looked past him at the house we'd built together, the porch where we'd celebrated birthdays, the garden we'd planted, the blue front door he insisted made the place feel welcoming. Every corner held a memory, and every memory now carried the weight of what he'd done. When I looked back at him, my answer was simple. I don't hate you, Ethan. I just don't trust you, and I don't want someone I can't trust in my life. Ethan nodded, picked up the last box, and walked to the moving truck. I expected one final plea, but he only looked back at the house before climbing inside. I stood in the driveway until the truck disappeared. Rebecca slipped an arm around my shoulders. You okay? I don't know yet. You will be. For the first time in weeks, I wanted to believe someone. The divorce became official on a rainy Tuesday. There were no dramatic speeches or last-minute apologies, just signatures, paperwork, and a judge confirming that 11 years together were over. My attorney called before noon. It's finished, the house is yours, the refinance is complete, and Ethan received his $85,000. After I hung up, the silence felt unfamiliar. For weeks my life had revolved around evidence, lawyers, and negotiations. Now there was nothing left to fight, only a future to rebuild. The first few weeks weren't easy. I still woke expecting to hear Ethan making coffee, and more than once I reached for my phone before remembering there was no one left to text. Rebecca kept checking on me, sometimes bringing dinner, sometimes just sitting beside me without saying a word. I eventually realized that not every silence needed to be filled. About a month later, Melissa stopped by my office. I heard something about Ethan. If it's gossip, I don't want it. It isn't. It's closure. She told me. Olivia had been seeing several men at the same time, including other married co-workers. Ethan hadn't been the exception he'd imagined. Within days, that secret stopped being a secret inside the company. He'd been just another man believing promises she'd made to everyone else. The fallout was swift. Human Resources investigated the relationship because it began during a company retreat, and within weeks, both Ethan and Olivia had resigned. The promotion he'd once talked about disappeared along with his reputation. Not long afterward, an old mutual friend stopped me at the grocery store. "I owe you an apology," she said. I believed what Ethan and his mother were saying. "Thank you," I replied. That was enough. Some friendships returned, others didn't, and I learned to accept both. 2 months after the divorce, I finally opened the guest room Ethan had emptied. Sunlight poured through the windows as I pulled back the curtains, and for the first time it no longer looked like the room where I'd packed away a marriage. It looked like a fresh start. I donated the extra furniture, and a week later I adopted a 3-year-old golden retriever who immediately claimed the entire house as his own. His paws echoed through rooms that had once felt painfully empty, and little by little the silence stopped feeling lonely. One evening, I found a copy of the note I'd left for Ethan. Looking back, I stopped asking whether our marriage could have been saved. That answer disappeared the moment Ethan chose another lie instead of the truth. That evening, I locked the front door and watched my dog race across the living room after his tennis ball. For the first time in years, walking into that house didn't feel like reopening an old wound. It simply felt like coming home.